Who will the Indiana Fever be protecting? Who won't they be protecting? And why won't they be protecting? I don't believe Sophie Cunningham is a player they're going to protect, and I'll explain why. I believe they will obviously protect the GOAT, the head honcho, a.k.a. the reason, because she's the reason everybody's tuned in. That is Caitlin Clark. They'll protect
that confidence right there. That's someone who just analyzed the new CBA details and realized the Indiana Fever are about to make a decision that's going to shock half their fan base. Because Sophie Cunningham, the sharpshooter everyone assumed was untouchable, might not be protected in the expansion draft. And before you lose your mind, the math actually makes sense. Here's what changed. The WNBA Players Association just finalized a new collective bargaining agreement that fundamentally alters how teams approach expansion protection. We're not talking minor tweaks. We're talking about core designation rules, protected free agent classifications, and contract structures that flip the entire strategy on its head.
Okay, we saw the detail where you're no longer going to be able to core a player that has more than 6 years of service in the league. And that sent the alarms off for Kelsey Mitchell. Kelsey Mitchell's been in the league for more than 6 years. Kelsey Mitchell's already been cored. And if that's the case, you can't core her. You have to give her a max and hope she wants to take a 1-year max when somebody out there is going to offer a multi-year max deal for her, I believe. But another detail has come out.
Let's break down the 5 players Indiana will almost certainly protect, because understanding this list reveals exactly why Cunningham ends up on the outside looking in. Caitlin Clark, obviously, the rookie who averaged 19.2 points and 8.4 assists while drawing 3.2 million viewers to her games, isn't going anywhere. She's the franchise cornerstone, the reason ticket prices tripled, and the player who single-handedly changed the economic trajectory of this organization. Aliyah Boston, the 2023 Rookie of the Year and Clark's pick-and-roll partner. Their two-woman game generated 1.4 points per possession in the final month of the season, making them one of the most efficient duos in the league. You don't break that up.
Well, okay. Now, the reason you protect Lexie Hull, oh, yeah, it's because she plays great. Yes, she plays great with Caitlin Clark, and we always want to see Lexie Hull play with Caitlin Clark. You protect her because you want to keep the protections of her being a protected free agent. Okay, so Lexie Hull and her agent is going to be able to go out there, scour the market, test the market, and see what the offers are. Now, the Indiana Fever have the right to match any offer she gets.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. Lexie Hull is a restricted free agent, which means she has a special designation under the new CBA. If Indiana protects her in the expansion draft, they retain matching rights on any offer she receives from another team. That's crucial. Say the Golden State Valkyries offer Hull $800,000 annually. Indiana can match that offer and keep her on the roster. But if they don't protect her and she gets selected in the expansion draft, those matching rights disappear. She's gone. No negotiation, no counteroffer, nothing. Given that Hull shot 46.7% from three-point range in games alongside Clark, and given that their chemistry is already established, protecting her is a no-brainer. You're not gambling on replacing that kind of floor spacing and off-ball movement.
They are going to take Sophie Cunningham in an expansion draft. That means they're going to be giving her a max contract, $1 million+, which is something as an Indiana Fever fan you were never going to do. You were never going to do that. Now, unless they're just thirsty and feel like she's going to sell some tickets or something, I don't see them taking her in an expansion draft and giving her a max contract or like, I don't see it. Why would a team take?
Mikayla Timpson is the 4th protection, and this one's purely about asset management. She's on a rookie contract through the 2026 season, which means Indiana controls her rights at below market value for multiple years. You don't give that away for free. Even if Timpson never develops into a starter, having a young player locked into a cost-controlled deal provides roster flexibility when you're paying Clark and Boston significant money. It's basic financial strategy. Which brings us to the controversial 5th protection, Kelsey Mitchell.
The protection on her, you're going to protect her, and she's still going to go hit the free market as an unprotected free agent. It doesn't make sense. Why would you risk losing a Mikayla Timpson who you have under contract for a longer period of time? Obviously, Caitlin Clark, Aliyah Boston, that doesn't need to be discussed. Okay, Kelsey Mitchell, you're going to keep her. You're going to core her for one more year. Maybe, you could trade her during the season and get something in return. But I doubt they'd even trade her in the season because it's Stephanie White and it's Kelly Crosskoff, and we don't trust this front office to make the right moves for the future anyway. But Sophie Cunningham appears to be the odd one out when it comes to this protection. And I believe that if Sophie Cunningham was a protected free agent.
Now this is where the new CBA details matter. Originally, when the core designation changes were announced, it looked like Indiana couldn't core Mitchell. The new rule states that players with more than 6 years of service can no longer be cored, and Mitchell has been in the league since 2018. 7 seasons, she's passed the threshold. But here's the critical detail that came out last week. That rule doesn't take effect until the 2027 offseason. For the 2026 season, teams can still core veteran players under the old system, which means Indiana has 1 more year to use the core designation on Mitchell, paying her a maximum salary of approximately $243,000 for a single season. Is that ideal? No. Mitchell could get multi-year max offers from other teams in free agency. But if Indiana protects her in the expansion draft and cores her for 2026, they at least guarantee she's on the roster for 1 more season. And if the team is competitive, maybe she takes a hometown discount on a longer deal. Maybe they trade her midseason for assets. The point is, protecting her keeps options open.
Be protected. Now let's take a listen as Annie Costable, aka Annie Scoops, spoke about the core rule that will take effect in 2027.
2027. So superstar players of large reputation, and that players can only be cored with 6 or few years. Players can only be cored with 6 or fewer years of service beginning in 2027. So superstar players have largely not had.
So that's the 5: Clark, Boston, Hull, Timpson, Mitchell, which leaves Sophie Cunningham as the odd player out. And look, I get the emotional reaction. Cunningham shot 40.5% from 3 after joining Indiana. She provided veteran toughness, playoff experience, and the kind of physical defense that this roster desperately needed. Watching her and Clark develop chemistry over the final weeks of the season was genuinely exciting. But here's the reality. Cunningham is an unrestricted free agent. Unlike Hull, she doesn't have the restricted designation. If Indiana protects her in the expansion draft, she can still walk away in free agency without giving the Fever any chance to match offers.
So by the time players actually have freedom over free agency, their free agency decisions, again, they're pushing 30.
Would you
See, so that is the state of the core situation, and that is why Kelsey Mitchell will be cored this year, because that rule doesn't take effect until 2027. So I want you to get down in the comments, let me know what you think. Should the Fever just say screw it and still protect Sophie Cunningham, even though she's going to be an unprotected free agent? Get down in the comments, let me know what you think. This Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share the channel.
Think about that scenario. You use one of your 5 protection slots on Cunningham. The expansion draft happens. She's safe. Then free agency opens, and she signs with the Las Vegas Aces for more money and a better championship opportunity. Indiana gets nothing in return. Alternatively, you don't protect her. If the Toronto Tempo or Portland Fire select her in the expansion draft, they're committing to pay her a maximum contract, which for a 28-year-old role player is approximately $243,000. That's the rule. Expansion teams must offer selected players a max deal. Now ask yourself, is either expansion franchise giving Sophie Cunningham a max contract? She averaged 8.6 points per game last season. She's a solid 3-and-D wing, but she's not a franchise cornerstone. She's not someone you build around. The most likely scenario is that Cunningham goes unselected in the expansion draft because neither Toronto nor Portland wants to allocate max money to a complementary player. Then she hits unrestricted free agency, where Indiana can make her a competitive offer without having wasted a protection slot. Does Cunningham want to return to Indiana? Probably. She's repeatedly talked about how much she enjoys playing with Clark, and the Fever can offer her significant minutes and a defined role. But she's also going to test the market. That's what unrestricted free agents do. Chicago might offer more money. Minnesota might offer a better chance at a championship. Phoenix might offer her a return to familiar territory. Cunningham's agent would be negligent not to explore those options. This is where some fans are going to say, just protect her anyway, show loyalty, prove you value her, and I understand that sentiment. But front offices don't operate on sentiment. They operate on probability and asset management. If you protect Cunningham and she leaves anyway, you've essentially traded Michaela Timpson's cost-controlled contract for nothing. You've given up team control over a young asset in exchange for a gesture that didn't even work. Kelly Krauskopf and Stephanie White have to think bigger than one player. They're building a sustainable contender around Caitlin Clark's prime years, which means maximizing flexibility and preserving assets. Now let's talk about the broader CBA changes, because the core designation shift is going to reshape the entire league over the next few years. Under the old system, teams could core players indefinitely. Breanna Stewart was cored by Seattle multiple times before finally reaching unrestricted free agency at age 29. Brittany Griner went through the same process in Phoenix. These superstars spent their entire primes with limited negotiating power. The new rule changes that, starting in 2027, once a player reaches 6 years of service, she can't be cored anymore. She hits unrestricted free agency with full control over her destination. This is going to create chaos. Think about the 2027 free agent class. Players who've been stuck on small market teams through their rookie contracts and core years will suddenly have leverage. Dallas might lose Satu Sabali. Atlanta might lose Ryan Howard. Teams that have relied on the core designation to retain stars are going to face real competition for the first time, and it's going to force front offices to be smarter about contract timing. You can't just assume you'll core someone anymore. You have to negotiate extensions earlier, offer competitive money proactively, and actually create an environment where players want to stay. Indiana is ahead of this curve with Clark. She's on a rookie deal through 2027, which means the Fever have time to build a championship-caliber roster before her first real free agency. But they can't waste these years. Which brings us back to the Sophie Cunningham decision. Some of you are thinking, this is disrespectful. She helped turn the season around. She deserves protection. But deserving something and being the strategically correct choice are different things. Cunningham does deserve respect. She also deserves a fair market offer in free agency. What she doesn't deserve is for Indiana to make an illogical roster decision that weakens the team's long-term flexibility. If the Fever can bring her back on a reasonable 2-year deal after the expansion draft, that's ideal. If she gets a better offer elsewhere and decides to leave, that's her right as an unrestricted free agent. But using a protection slot on a player who can leave anyway makes no sense. Let's also address the elephant in the room. The Indiana Fever front office doesn't exactly have a track record of brilliant decision-making. This is the same organization that drafted Aliyah Edwards and then immediately traded her. The same organization that mismanaged Kelsey Mitchell's contract situation for years. So when I say Indiana will probably protect these 5 players, I'm basing that on logical analysis, not on faith in Kelly Krauskopf's judgment. There's a non-zero chance they make an emotional decision and protect Cunningham over Timpson. There's a chance they get cute and try to protect someone unexpected. But if they follow the math, if they prioritize asset control and financial flexibility, the 5 protections are Clark, Boston, Hull, Timpson, and Mitchell, and Cunningham enters free agency unprotected. Now here's the part that should actually worry Fever fans. What happens if Cunningham gets a better offer elsewhere and leaves? Who replaces her production? The 2026 free agent class is relatively weak for 3-and-D wings. Kayla McBride will be available, but she's 33 years old and likely commanding significant money. Courtney Williams might be available depending on Minnesota's decisions, but there's no obvious Cunningham replacement just sitting out there. Which means Indiana might have to get creative. Maybe they trade the 6th overall pick in the 2026 draft for a veteran wing. Maybe they overpay for a mid-tier free agent. Maybe they promote someone from the practice squad and hope for development. This is the risk of not protecting Cunningham. You're gambling that either she comes back in free agency or you can find adequate replacement production elsewhere. And if that gamble fails, you've weakened the roster around Caitlin Clark during a crucial year of her development. But the alternative, protecting Cunningham and losing Timpson or Mitchell, creates different problems. You're either giving up a cost-controlled young asset or you're losing an all-star caliber scorer who can create her own shot. Neither of those options is appealing. So the Fever are choosing the lesser of two evils. They're betting that Cunningham either returns or can be replaced because the cost of protecting her is too high. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about what this expansion draft reveals about the WNBA's growth. The fact that we're having this conversation at all, the fact that teams have to make difficult protection decisions, is evidence that the league has enough talent depth to support 14 franchises. 5 years ago, an expansion draft would have been a joke. Teams would have protected their 5 best players and left nothing but G League level talent available. But now, Sophie Cunningham is legitimately a player that expansion teams might want. Lexie Hull is someone they definitely target. The available player pool is going to be surprisingly competitive. Toronto and Portland are going to field actual rosters, not just collection of cast-offs. And that's good for the league. So here's what happens next. The expansion draft takes place in December 2025. Indiana protects Clark, Boston, Hull, Timpson, and Mitchell. Cunningham goes unprotected. Neither Toronto nor Portland selects her because they don't want to commit max money to a role player. Free agency opens in January 2026. Cunningham's agent fields offers from multiple teams. Chicago offers $180,000 annually over 2 years. Minnesota offers $160,000 over 3 years with a player option. Indiana offers $175,000 over 2 years with a team option for a third year. Cunningham takes a week to decide. She ultimately re-signs with Indiana because she wants to play with Clark and compete for a championship. The Fever get their wing back without having wasted a protection slot. Fans who panicked about her not being protected feel silly. Alternatively, she takes more money from Chicago. Indiana scrambles to replace her production, and we spend all of next season debating whether they made the right call. That's also possible. But either way, the decision not to protect Sophie Cunningham isn't disrespectful. It's not short-sighted. It's basic roster management in a league with complicated free agency rules and limited protection slots. You protect the players you can't afford to lose or can't replace. Cunningham, as good as she is, doesn't meet that threshold. So if you're a Fever fan freaking out about this, take a breath. Understand the CBA rules, look at the bigger picture, and trust that if Cunningham wants to be in Indiana, she'll find a way back. And if she doesn't, the front office will have the flexibility to pivot. That's the bet Kelly Krauskopf is making. Now we wait to see if it pays off.